Donkey Kong Country 2 is structured as an ascent up a mountain towards a giant bird in the sky. This is a trait shared by both the preceding and following games. On the peak of Donkey Kong Island is also a giant bird, and in the highest place in the clouds of the northern hemisphere is also a giant bird. It's a transition from male bird to an androgynous robot bird, and finally to a female bird. Donkey Kong Country 2 stands as the limbo state between those two poles. Furthermore, in no game does the bird get liberated except in Donkey Kong Country 3, where you finally unlock the prison that was keeping it trapped. In the Game Boy Advance version of the game, Wrinkly's temple is decorated with the same sundials that trap Queen Banana Bird herself. She is the priestess of the Banana Bird religion, and seems to be the only Kong with a strong spiritual bond to the goddess. In the SNES Donkey Kong Country 3, everyone lives in a house except Wrinkly, who lives in a cave. This division between animal characters who live like humans and Wrinkly is very strange, especially since the only other characters who are found in caves are the banana birds. But they don't live there, they're trapped. Does that mean she didn't exactly live in a cave but was trapped in one, like the banana birds, or trapped like the goddess herself? She lives in a cave, so she lives under the earth, sepulchered. So, the Donkey Kong Country series as a whole ends with the liberation of a divine bird in the sky. The immediate effect of this is that Wrinkly dies and her spirit gets liberated from her body into what becomes Donkey Kong 64. Both mothers fly to heaven at the same time, as if they were one and the same mother. Donkey Kong Country 2 marks Wrinkly's first appearance into the series. She's introduced in the same game as Dixie is. They are both introduced simultaneously. If you think about it, the only two games where Wrinkly is alive are the only two games where Dixie appears, since she also disappears in Donkey Kong 64 with Wrinkly's death. What's curious about Donkey Kong Country 2 is that whereas Candy Kong was the first female Kong to appear, Dixie is the first playable female Kong. Donkey Kong Country 2 is subtitled Diddy's Kong Quest, so we assume that he is the main protagonist. But Donkey Kong Country 3 is inarguably about her. It's Dixie's double trouble. Also, as mentioned before, the third game is watched over by a goddess instead of by a god, so the feminine aspect of this series comes more and more into the forefront. The composer for Donkey Kong Country 3 was a woman also, Evelyn Fisher, giving this third installment a markedly more female energy than the previous two games. Somehow, this female presence is at the very center of Donkey Kong Country 3. Like a phoenix, the bird keeps returning. Each game, seen under this perspective, is a repetition of the last. You climb the mountain and the bird spreads its wings. It happens over and over. All that changes is that the feminine archetype, the anima, is uncovered and becomes more and more visible, or more and more subtle with each installment. Necky Sr., the Flying Croc, and Queen Banana Bird. Necky is an interesting case because he appears at either side of Gangplank Galleon. Let me explain. The first boss in Donkey Kong Country 2 is Crow, who is essentially a Necky with a hat on. Necky Sr. had acted as a guardian before reaching the galleon, and Crow acts as the guardian before leaving it. Both birds flank this ship. Also, since the Flying Croc is just an empty shell, Necky Sr. and Queen Banana Bird are the only living birds at the beginning and end of the series. A male bird and a female bird. Crow stands in the middle between them as an androgynous character. He is presented as male as a substitute for K. Rool, since he is the captain of K. Rool's ship. But Crow has seemingly been laying eggs, which would make him a female crow. He is in between male and female, but also in between life and death. He is in between both the beginning and the end of the Donkey Kong Country series. We kill him on the ship, but his ghost comes back in Gloomy Gulch. This limbo state may explain why the Flying Croc is the only non-living bird to end a game in the series. It is neither male nor female, alive or dead. It is in some sense divine, beyond material existence, while simultaneously being but a metallic shell.